Welcome. This is the Milo Yiannopoulos show, although it will not be called that for very much longer. And the man responsible for the forward-thinking rebrand, not just of the show, but of me too, joins us again this week. Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart. Hello, boss.
Milo, is always thrilling to be with you because it's a rare moment where I was part of creating one of the greatest podcasts and I get to be a part of it.
You do. You also the man responsible for the coolest byline in journalism, which exists, of course, at Breitbart.com and is simply by Milo.
It's amazing. I was actually asked about that for the first time in media when doing press for you, Milo. By the way, Don King has nothing on me, and I'm not talking about stomping a man to death. I'm talking about as a hype man. I was hyping you. I felt terrible I didn't record the conversation because it was 30 minutes about how great Milo is, how great he is already, and how ascendant he is because he simply has the right cocktail of cool and smart and discipline.
Who is this directed at?
This was our buddy Joel Stein, who was on the podcast last week.
Oh, of course, Joel Stein. I
believe it's safe to say he got served. But we're very grateful for him because it was a great show, and it was really nice of him to be the foil for you. But it was pretty brutal, takedown after takedown from you, good sir.
Well, I mean, he wrote a cover story. It was about trolling, and he said that the internet culture was being destroyed by this culture of hatred. And I just asked him a few what I thought were very simple, basic, obvious questions. It seems to me self-evidently true that conservative women get worse stuff than anybody else. It's fairly well documented, fairly obvious if you live on the internet. So why were all the examples in his piece liberals and feminists? And he sort of spluttered and babbled and couldn't really give an answer. But we must say we do love Joel Stein. He was a very good sport to do it because I think he knew that was what was going to happen. He was sitting in my living room, in my lair, my den, my pit, surrounded by my staff on my podcast, right in the viper's nest. I think he knew what was going to happen, and he dealt with it very graciously.
And we appreciate that, and that's nice of him to go because now we're at this point which has become my obsession. And really one reason that I like about you, Milo, and what I like about Donald Trump, and what I like about what Breitbart's become, is that we become free speech central. It's been like this for a long time, but we're now at the point where if you disagree on things, you can't speak to people as adults any longer in the Western world. And Here's the thing, is that I will pack up and go home and take my ball with me and go out into the country somewhere and raise dogs, and then I can have much bigger dogs than the ones I have now. When I become convinced people aren't capable of being adults and disagreeing politely and still being able to be civil to one another while disagreeing on ideas and values. And this social justice warrior class, Generation Wuss, as Bret Easton Ellis calls it, as fostered by our university system, they're on this mission to make it so that if you disagree with people politically, you can no longer be civil. I don't think that's really in human nature. I think we want to be able to disagree, and I think this is really the essence of evolution, that change, seeing what's different amongst one another, that is sometimes essential to growth.
Well, it's certainly how the history of ideas has worked up until now. I mean, there's a sort of academic equivalent of natural selection, isn't there? Where people toss around crazy ideas, sensible ideas, and we just sort of see what sticks and see which way the tide of intellectual history takes us. I have a slightly different analysis from you, only in that I put less emphasis on civility because I quite enjoy rudeness. And the way I analyze this is not so much that people can't have a discussion politely when they disagree on key issues, as so much as they just simply can't hear each other at all. There are these systems in place that sort of, these hatches that get battened down immediately that stop people from even hearing the argument. So you step off the ideological reservation as a conservative, as a libertarian, or even as a classical liberal, and leftists will start the name calling. They'll start calling you a bigot, a homophobe, a sexist, a transphobe, a racist. And this seems to me to be something a little different from failing at civility.
This is brilliant, and this is why I rely on you to enhance my ideas, not just the other way around. Because
we edit each other.
I agree with your assessment. It really isn't about civility. In fact, lack of civility is sometimes the most entertaining and the most powerful.
I mean, I'd be out of a job if you were right, surely.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I'm in the right position as editor-in-chief of Breitbart.
Editor-in-chief of Breitbart rails against lack of civility in public life. Right, exactly. All right then.
It's mostly about taking things personally. That it all, like Joel Stein can go in there and do a one-on-one interview where you guys disagree on everything, and he knows he's losing the debate, but he can still interact with you personally without feeling like without offense, without people taking
and not
offense
losing his sense of humor. He didn't lose his sense of humor. He was funny right up until the end. Well, I mean, he was, trying to keep up a brave face, but he was a gentleman about it. He was gracious and good-natured, and he was able to laugh at himself. And for that reason, he has gone into my bucket of good liberals. He has added, his name has been, it's a very small list. It's a very small list.
But he was the first, Milo, to ask me about why we changed your name from Milo Yiannopoulos to Milo. And it was mostly aesthetic. I just think that it puts you on the level of like a Celine or a Mariah.
It was your Sean Parker moment, wasn't it? Facebook, it's cleaner.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's not Facebook. It's not the Facebook. It's Facebook. Yeah, exactly. I want to get your take. I don't actually want to explain it because I think this is going to be in the big piece that Joel's writing, and you can give away the publication if you want on you. So I want to tease that because I think people should read the piece. I think it's going to be really good.
Well, I don't think we're going to cause any trouble by saying that I'm going to be the subject of a large feature by Joel Stein in Bloomberg Business Week, which is very exciting because
it is exciting.
Normally when they wander over into social subjects, they tend to commission people who are going to do some very enthusiastic, full-throated virtue signaling. For instance, the Gamergate controversy, sort of feminists and authoritarian scolds versus the gamers, they came down very much on the side of political correctness and the establishment and the accepted correct opinions about feminism. It seems to me that by getting Joel Stein, who actually very often irritates his own side, very often winds up people on his own side of the political divide. He's written some quite edgy things in his career, as our Joel, and quite enjoys trolling his own side, which I always respect and appreciate. By getting him to do it, seems to me to be a suggestion that Bloomberg Business Week is prepared to deal in a bit more subtlety and nuance than is normally brought to bear on me and on Breitbart.
And remember,
that's a good sign.
Bloomberg Business Week was the publication that wrote the big profile on Stephen K. Bannon, the editor, the executive chairman of Breitbart News, temporarily on leave of absence to be the CEO of the Trump campaign. That was the biggest story in Washington.
The amazing
and
picture.
No one saw it.
That amazing picture of anybody who saw the cover of a magazine will know what we're talking about. You should seek it out if you're in front of a computer, which you probably are if you're a listener of mine. Seek out the cover of Bloomberg Business Week, which featured Steve Bannon. I think they called him the most dangerous political operative in America. When you see this picture, you will understand what not giving a crap really means. The sort of the high, when you turn being an alpha male into high art and you care so little about what other people think that you just your manner, your body language, the way you dress just exudes utter contempt for other people's expectations and opinions. And that's sort of the moment I fell in love with Steve, actually. That's such a cool picture. It's just
people
so cool.
Really saw him for the honey badger that he was. But, so we will, of course, report back on the media as we often do at Breitbart, which is that if we're not treated fairly, then we will report on the reporters. But I think that the fact that they know that now, and he's writing at a publication that did read the tea leaves and what's happening with Breitbart News before almost anyone else did, I'm pretty hopeful that this will be a something that your listeners and readers will want to read.
I hope so. Now, interestingly, this is not even the most interesting profile. I shouldn't say that. No disrespect to Bloomberg or to Joel, but it is not in a different sort of way, in a different bit of my brain, a more trivial, superficial, narcissistic bit of my brain. You might imagine that means most of it. There's another magazine feature that I'm equally as excited about, which is not GQ Australia, which is also happening next month, but it is Out Magazine. Now, Out Magazine, I don't normally indulge. I don't normally engage with the trade press, sort of gay trade press, because it is, lowest rent, lowest standards, most awful knee-jerk politics, and deeply dumb reporters. But there's this nice guy called Chadwick Moore, very smart, very interesting. I think he agrees with me on more subjects than he's quite prepared to let on, but I don't want to drop him in it by saying any more than that. He was writing a profile of me for Out magazine, and I have agreed to appear in this more cerebral gay magazine, which publishes Bret Easton Ellis, by the way. His great essay, The Reign of the Magical Gay Elves, which is about political correctness in the gay world, which is one of the most intelligent things written about the gay lobby in America I have read in the last decade, possibly written ever. I have agreed, in principle, to appear in full drag in this magazine. So describe. See, full drag. You're not going to wear like a wedding gown or some sort of a formal evening wear. This is more flamboyant than that, I imagine. Well, I mean, there are two ways to go with it. I think one would be this sort of high camp clownish drag queen of.
And clowns are in right now, scaring children.
Well, well, of course, drag is a kind of clowning. It's the most interesting kind of clowning, but it is a sort of clownship, I think. The other route that I have suggested to them, I don't know whether they're going to be up for this, and I don't know if they're going to take me up on this, is I said I'd quite like to appear as Nancy Reagan, because I think I could pull off the red jackets and the brass buttons really rather fetchingly.
This is one of Milo's ideas where everyone thinks it's a joke until he goes forward with it, and then they realize he was being serious the whole time.
I don't make jokes. You know, I make jokes in my column. Like, I will crack jokes. I will sometimes say funny things. But when I come up with an insane idea like this, it's real. You know, people are just like, people still don't believe me. Nobody cares. Like, I mean it. I will be in the gay magazine dressed as Nancy Reagan. Like, I don't know. I don't understand what I have done in my life to give people the idea that I might not go ahead and do that.
Well, you've done nothing, and I for one am not surprised, but maybe I'm alone.
Now, I want to talk to you about the main subject of this show, which is going to be, the reason I'm doing all this press, the reason I'm doing all this media, the main subject of the show, which is the upcoming, final, glorious, magnificent, very well funded, and beautifully produced, splendiferous, spectacular final leg of the Dangerous Faggot Tour. We're taking in, 40, 45 colleges, I think, starting in Texas in September, going all over the country, with more dates being booked and dropping on the website, dangerousfaggot.com, all the time. This is a fabulous Breitbart production. We have, and this is the most exciting bit of the tour for me, and I still can't quite believe this is real, because this isn't supposed to happen to people like us. But you have seen, have you not, the mock-ups of the tour bus?
I have. The art is spectacular.
This is a real thing that's happening.
You do have a Breitbart B bling medallion in one of the designs, which I enjoy very much.
It's on the rear end of the bus.
You know, it's funny, Milo, because we talked about this really early in the summer when we were when we went to the Cannes Film Festival and Film Market. And I told you, I sat you down on one knee, as I often do, and I said, you need to prepare for this tour. This is going to be the biggest moment. And I was expecting you to just basically lock yourself in a library and just read for 3 months. No, you hit the gym and stopped eating carbs and drinking champagne. And that was the main focus. So
of course, because you thought, I mean, look, anybody can read a book the night before and give an interesting 20-minute talk on things, but not everybody can hit the gym for 9 months and get abs and look hot and have a wardrobe that looks phenomenal. And my great insight in this college tour, bringing a bit of showbiz glam and entertainment values to something that has traditionally been very dry, which is talking about free speech at college. I recognized early that it matters just as much how I look and how I sound as what I say.
Yeah, and that's where you and I think, differ with a lot of the Beltway establishment Republicans that are out there, which is that we don't think it's a negative to have an entertaining component to conservatism, to grassroots populist nationalist values, the free market liberalism. We like those things, but we also think that you're going to need a spoonful of sugar, particularly to reach the younger crowd. And I don't know why so many elbow patch wearing people in Washington, D.C. at these think tanks near where I live in downtown Washington, why they look down their nose at the exact crowd that you're motivating. And you're going to be filling up 40 different venues, and there's going to be tons of media attention. It'll probably be one of the biggest media events. It'll certainly get more attention than a lot of Hollywood movies that cost 100 times the budget that will take place during that time.
Every crowd of mine is bigger than every crowd of Hillary Clinton's.
And we're supposed to feel bad about this. It's not working. I don't feel bad about it at all. I feel freaking fantastic.
We're being low rent shamed or trash shamed or something. I don't know, or maybe success shamed. Maybe, I've got this feeling like conservatives think there's something wrong with winning. They'd rather sort of, the whole point of conservatism in America has been to lose gracefully and with your principles intact and sort of to fall on your sword and to sort of, to concede in an honorable way. Well, no thanks. I'd quite like to win, and I'd like to win fabulously.
Something that I don't know why this never factors in with the establishment conservative media, that there's a math element to what we're doing at Breitbart News, what you're doing with the Dangerous Faggot Tour, Milo, and what you're doing with your brand. There are a lot of young people who kind of like America, who kind of like the idea of keeping the government out of as much as humanly possible. They don't really like safe spaces, trigger warnings, and that everyone must be super sensitive and sentimental and be a precious snowflake all the time. They don't think that's making us any better. And those people are all going to vote. So why are we opting out because we don't like some of the tactics that some of them use? Why are we ignoring that group entirely? It seems fundamentally stupid unless, of course, you want to lose. And we know the Republicans have lost 5 of the last 6 popular votes. So what are we going to do? Are we merely going to declare that, or are we going to change some of the tactics? Are we going to start trying to get provocative young attention seekers who share the values and have intellectual rigor go out and speak to these groups of voters? Or are we just going to sit on our hands and feel great about ourselves because we did things the right way? I don't accept the latter.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Another insight that I have had and said in a few interviews recently is that, and I think this is unique to conservatism, and I don't understand why conservatives ended up like this and why liberals didn't. But conservatives often seem to think that writing about doing things is the same as doing things. Writing a long essay for commentary or for National Review actually changes something, whereas liberals seem to recognize you need to go out, you need to start university departments, you need to start think tanks. They understand the way that the sort of daisy chain of information works is if you've got a university department pumping out advocacy research, which is being spread by think tanks, which is then picked up by the liberal media, you've got a kind of conveyor belt, and every layer of that chain adds credibility and authenticity and authority to whatever bit of politics or social engineering it is that you've decided to try to hurl on the population. And the left is very, very good at that. The right hasn't even started to work out how to do it yet.
What the left has done is that they get people who are relatively low motivation, and they show up to the polls, and their vote counts just as much as the person who is obsessed with politics and obsessed with current affairs and is obsessively reading. Each vote counts one at a time. So should we criticize the left for this, or should we understand that this is their ticket to victory and think, how do we do something similar? Well, how do we do something similar? What we do is we reach out to newer groups of people. We try to get people involved in the system who either thought the system is such a failure, I haven't bothered for 30 years, or are young enough that they haven't been a part of it just by nature of the fact that they were too young. And I think Breitbart, I think Donald Trump, I think Milo, I think we're all doing a similar thing, which is trying to get people who are not engaged in the political process engaged again. And as I said, you need that aforementioned spoonful of sugar in order to do it in a lot of cases. And for you, Milo, that's a lot of foul language and fantastic hair. And we all have our own methods of getting those people fired up.
In my case, it's not so much a small spoonful of sugar as I sort of violently thrust, like fistfuls of syrup down your throat. I gag you with maple syrup. There are places you can go for a spoonful of sugar. The Dangerous Faggot Tour is not one of them. But your reasoning, of course, is sound.
Right. And I'm trying to speak generally because I am at war with the left. I don't like leftist policies, and I want to be quite frank about that. But I become much more concerned with apathy, much more concerned with people who are not engaged in the political process. And the way to engage people, I believe, is to find people like you, Milo, tap them, get them as big of an audience as possible. And then here's the key, and this is my request to the listeners. Tell family and friends. Tell 10 people about Milo and just say, you don't have to agree with him. You will be entertained and you'll be a richer person. You'll have more perspective just by listening. And I'm confident that if you listen to these podcasts once a week for the next several years, I think you're going to feel completely different about what you've been told by not just the liberal media, but by your schools and by Hollywood.
Well, listeners now will know that you weren't kidding when you described yourself as a thoroughly brilliant hype man. We're going to take a brief break from this conversation for me to tell you about some of the people who make this show possible. The first of whom are long-running, dear, beloved, ferociously loyal. For some reason, they haven't stopped advertising with me. Who knows why? Our ferociously loyal and much loved TrueCar. Pricing information is great, but there's more to buying a car than just price. If you're me, there are important questions like, will this car match my favorite outfits, and will it make my friends feel poor? Alex, what car do you drive?
I have a BMW X1.
Okay, see, why do you always pick me up in such terrible cars?
If
you have a nice car, why do you have a nice car? Why do you pick me up in these horrible, like, Hyundais?
You do get the Hyundais, though their flagship Genesis is quite a nice car.
No, it isn't.
Because of the
you
brand
close
name.
the door and it's like a tin can. It's
I
like
had the Malibu,
hurling down the freeway in a tin can. It's almost as bad as a Prius.
Yeah, I just came back from Los Angeles where I rented the Malibu, whatever was the Chevy Malibu, whatever was the cheapest thing that they had available at the Hertz Rent-A-Car. It's quite funny, yes. So I have a car in DC, which is quite nice. It has even the upgraded wood on the interior, and that's not a sexual reference, Milo.
Dear.
And that sits in the garage, and then once a month I go to LA for a week and I rent the cheapest car that they have. So,
I think you've driven me 10 times. I have no evidence that this BMW exists.
Because I've driven you in LA. People drive in LA. So I should really just ship my car back to LA and leave it there for the once a month.
For my benefit, if for no other reason. Well, if you are unlike Alex and actually do want a decent car that you can give lifts to your friends, families, and your family and your colleagues in, you may wish to enjoy the buying experience of a TrueCar certified dealer.
It is a cool product because you can really be more efficient. There are just so many cars out there, used cars out there. You got to start somewhere.
Do you know that people always make up lies for these things? They always lie and they always say, oh, I love the product, I use it all the time. Well, yeah. I don't lie to my listeners. I'm unlikely ever to use TrueCar because I'm the sort of person who is driven rather than somebody who drives. But our executive producer did use TrueCar to buy a car the other day and said it was excellent. And he's the person, with the exception of you, that I trust most in the world. So I can't give you a personal recommendation because that would be dishonest. And I respect you all too much to lie to you. But I can tell you that somebody I do trust says it's great. And you should use it to avoid subjecting your friends to the experience that Alex Marlow subjects me to. TrueCar customers are more likely to enjoy a faster buying process when they connect with TrueCar certified dealers. Over 2 million cars have been sold to TrueCar users by the TrueCar certified dealer network, and there are over 11,000 TrueCar certified dealers nationwide. You will work directly with a TrueCar certified dealer contact, and by using the TrueCar website or the TrueCar app, you can easily find the vehicle you want. So when you're ready to buy a new or a used car, visit TrueCar.com or download the TrueCar app to enjoy a better car buying experience. Do you think the copywriter got paid by the number of TrueCars he could fit in per paragraph?
That was quite skillful. I'm going to have to hire that person.
Yeah, hire them to do the same thing with Trump. Some features are not available in all states. We move now to, I'm going to change the tone, the pace, just change the feel slightly of the show for our second advertisement, because I want to ask you, Alex, about a very serious subject. It is a serious subject connected to our second gracious and delightful new sponsor, but a returning sponsor, Dream Keepers. Now, before we get into what Dream Keepers is, if you don't know already, Alex, are you familiar with furries?
Is that when people have a fetish where they like to have sex with people dressed as stuffed animals?
Yes, it is. So the answer to the question is yes. Which leads me to my second question. As an intellectual,
well, hold on. We're going to have to note that the listeners will have to draw their own conclusions if I know that because I'm a perv or because I'm the editor of a powerful website, I'm supposed to know a little bit about everything.
Editor-in-chief, arguably America's most influential news service right now. I mean, it's a news service that, Trump could not have done it without us. We were on the front cover of the New York Times. What was it, 2-3 days ago? By the time you're listening to this, maybe 5 days ago. Arguably the most influential news service in America. Well, Alex, the second question, of course, is if you know what furries are and you know that as part of the process, as you surely do from reading Breitbart text coverage, you'll know about this, part of the process of becoming a furry is picking a fursona, which is, of course, a delightful portmanteau of fur and persona. And this is your animal alter ego. Now, I am a snow leopard because they are hungry bottoms, and listeners who don't know what that means are encouraged not to look it up. What would you like to speculate about what your fursona might be?
No, I've always been partial to the ocelot, but I don't know if that's a good thing, given what you just said about the snow leopard.
I have a feeling ocelots are like snow leopards.
Yeah, which might not be me.
No. I mean, so the choice that men always go for is like wolves and.
What about? See, I don't think of myself as furry. I think of myself as more like an armadillo or a rhino, something with really tough skin, so that the media can say not lots of mean, unsubstantiated things about me, and I don't care.
I see. So you want something with sort of rhino hide, but it's still got to be a marsupial or a mammal of some kind. It's not really a furry if it's an armadillo, is it?
What about a meerkat?
A meerkat. Yeah, I think you could be a meerkat because you've got a sort of permanently quizzical expression. And you tilt your head slightly.
I do tilt my head. My wife complains about that.
You do. You tilt your head slightly at various points in the conversation, and you're quite bouncy. Yeah, no, I think you're a meerkat. Although I'm not completely convinced that there are any more.
I knew we'd get down to business tonight during the podcast.
I'm not sure that a meerkat is going to be any more of a dominant sexual partner than a snow leopard or an ocelot, but I'm glad at least that we have cleared that up.
This is all part of an ad, by the way.
You get your money's worth. I got to tell you, you advertised in the Milo show, shortly to be Milo. I like that, by the way, because I want the end of the show for me to just be able to say, "You've been listening to Milo." And it sort of works.
I'm going to ask you about that because we got cut off 20 times, but you should finish your ad because I'm actually quite curious where you're going with this furries thing.
Oh, well, this is the ad. So, I've heard from many people about our recent sponsor, the Dreamkeepers comic, and the vast majority are impressed by its fantastic art and its depth of story. Obviously, a small minority is screaming in outrage because the subject of this comic book, this is the kind of high quality advertiser that the show attracts, is furries. Comic books have been a huge target of social justice warriors, and many of my readers know that mainstream comic companies fell hard for the social justice incursion. Well, if your favorite classic hero hasn't been thrown into the leftist mulcher and mutilated beyond recognition, just wait, because it is coming. It is going to happen. You'll remember we had Chuck Dixon on the show a while ago talking about
fantastic show.
Thank you. His own creations, watching his own creations. They blew up the city. He left the comic book, and the feminists came in and they literally nuked his city just as a sort of screw you.
I had no clue comic book types were so vindictive. But, that's why I listen to the broadcast.
It's because the stakes are so low. Comic books are not a lost cause. We're finally getting to the point. Comic books are not a lost cause. All the smartest, most creative people have bypassed the mainstream media train wreck and are working in webcomics and indie comic houses. Now, webcomics like Dreamkeepers, which is now becoming the official comic of the Milo show, which is a colorful, entertaining, and yes, furry adventure ride. Dreamkeepers got fantastic response from Milo fans, so please continue to visit them, read it for free, or better yet, purchase printed copies, which are available at dreamkeeperscomic.com. Together, we can help build a newer, better culture, one bastion of entertainment at a time. That was that, Alex. That's where I was going with it. It's a furries comic.
I've seen the comic because I always check out the great sponsors, which we're very, very proud of. If you like the show, there's really, aside from telling people about it, is supporting the sponsors because they support us. It's very pleasant circle. But it's very cool animation. I don't know the first thing about comics, but and you should check it out. But Milo, I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about why you love the idea of dropping Yianopolis, which is there aren't any other Yianopolises. Yianopoli out there competing with you. But there are at least two other Milos, I believe. There's the guy who's on the Gilmore Girls, and then there's a chocolate product of some sort. Well, so you were keen to do it. You were keen to drop Yianopolis and identify as Milo. And my explanation will probably show up in the Bloomberg Business Week piece. What's your explanation? What do you like about it?
Well, I've always, as a child of the internet era, I always wanted to own my name. And, so whenever you go to a new social network, you always want to try and get your chosen username or whatever. Or as somebody with a medium-sized ego, let's say, I always wanted to be able to go to Google and put Milo in and to get me back. So I've always sort of eyed up Milo Ventimiglia, this moderately talented and less good-looking than me actor. With,
I believe much shorter.
Much shorter, and no, just really nothing to write home about at all. And this sort of Ovaltine, Horlicksy malt drink popular in Malaysia, and sort of looked out in horror and confusion at how either of these Milos could be remotely, more popular, successful, famous, or beloved than I am. And I'm happy to tell listeners that situation has recently reversed itself. And now, of course, Google searches are different for everybody. They do personalize it, but now I think I pretty much dominate the front page for Milo Google searches. Growing up in the 90s, I was surrounded by divas, in particular those single-named ones, Celine, Whitney, Mariah, Britney. And I think my understanding of celebrity is sort of tied up with those people who managed to free themselves from the shackle of their surnames. And it was something to do, I think, in the 90s with breaking away from, your family, your history, your background, all the rest of it. Christina Aguilera sort of breaking the bounds of what, was supposedly possible as a woman. Delia did the same thing in the kitchen in the UK. Mariah just became this sort of iconic single name thing. Oprah, of course. Many of these women were sort of genre-defying megastars with careers spanning decades who became known simply by their first name. And it's sort of more of an achievement in a way than inventing a stage name like Madonna, where you can only be known as it from the first. These people have sort of earned the right to be crowned, queen of all Mariahs. And so I just always wanted to be Milo #1, and now I am.
Well, you absolutely are. And if you Google Milo, you will see that the top 3, 4, 5, 6, the top 6 links all link to you. On the right side, there's a big image of you, Milo Yianopolis, journalist, with part of your Wikipedia bio. There's one on the top half of the Google page is a reference to the Milo drink. It's about 6 or 7 links down. But the weirdest part of all is all of the images that appear, the top Milo images, are all pictures of this chocolate drink product and not pictures of you, who prides himself in his images. So we need to work on Google.
I think this is a Breitbart News failing. I think there's something wrong with the metadata on the site. I'm going to suggest.
In fact, I'm going to take after Executive Chairman Steve Bannon here and give assignments on the air. I think Breitbart Tech is going to have to report on this. I think there could be a conspiracy theory here. Why were all the Milo images? This is hilarious.
Who's Googling? Milo, who is Googling? Who is Googling for images of chocolate malted drinks?
Right.
Who wants a picture of Nestle Milo? Nobody. Who wants a picture of me? Everyone.
I'm looking at it right now, and I'm looking at the top 40 some odd images for the search Milo. There is one picture of you, and the rest is chocolate milk.
Look, I search for pictures of myself on Google Images more times a day than the rest of the world searches for images of this chocolate milk. What is?
Yeah, I would like to see the breakdown.
What is going wrong? What is going wrong? I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know.
Well, but we know it could be cooked. We know it could be cooked because
they're censoring Hillary's health stories. And also when you search for Mein Kampf and Donald Trump comes up, or you search for Donald Trump and Mein Kampf comes up, one of those two ways. Oh, and every time this happens with such regularity with Google, and every time it happens, they're like, oh, sorry, algorithmic error, we fixed it. Oh, sorry, terrible mistake, we fixed it. Well,
after
the 20th time, you start to wonder,
the humorless scolds who are trolling your program right now have their headline that Milo and Marlow speculate a Google conspiracy
to hide pictures of Milo Yiannopoulos. I think we should beat them to the punch and simply allege it in a headline tomorrow.
I've already assigned it. So, but I want to turn the tables and interview you a little bit because, we teased the podcast as talking about the Dangerous Faggot Tour, the latest edition, which is going to be a huge production. We're going to be filming a lot of it. There's going to be just constant updates at Breitbart.com and on your various social media platforms, which you should probably be plugging, by the way. That's a mid-show note from the boss.
It's actually not a mid-show note. It is a scold on my own program. It is a heckle, it is a roast, and it is a scold on my own show. After we've been talking about me for almost 35 minutes, you're scolding me for not talking about myself enough.
Well, that's what just happened, Alex.
That's what just happened.
Still stands.
Since you insist, you can follow me at Instagram at Milo.Yiannopoulos. You can search for Milo Yiannopoulos on YouTube or go to youtube.com/Milo Yiannopoulos. You can go to Twitter and not find very much. You can find me on Snapchat either by searching for my Snap code or by looking for the username Yiannopoulos. And of course, as always, you can find stories by and about me at Breitbart.com/Milo. Happy now?
I'm very happy, especially the Breitbart.com/Milo. Definitely one of the more popular components of the site. Milo did have the most popular story today.
When am I going to get a spot on the menu bar? That's what I want to know, Alex. You see, you can roast me live on the show. Two can play at that game.
To give you something to shoot for. But if you guys haven't read Why Milo's Leaving London, you have to do it and share it with your friends and family as well. But let's talk about the tour. I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to be different this time around, aside from higher production quality? What are you going to do to use the higher production quality to make the spectacle even bigger for your fans?
So I think what we did with the first 2 or 3 legs, however you decide to carve up what we've done so far, is talk about a lot of the same subjects to a lot of different audiences. And we varied the style, the delivery, and some of the theatrics a little bit, but the core messages stayed relatively constant. We were talking about feminism, we were talking about the wage gap, we were talking about campus rape culture, we were talking about free speech on campuses. I did a little bit about Black Lives Matter. With the new resources we have available, I'm going to be addressing a much, much wider range of topics. From the fun, provocative things that make you think about how people and society and sexuality and gender and social constructs work. For instance, I've got to talk brewing. Why do lesbians fake so many hate crimes? We've done the research. It seems to be conclusive. Where there are fake hate crimes, there is almost always a lesbian. So it's the sort of thing that just sounds preposterously offensive and ridiculous and off the wall. But you look at the data and you start to think, oh my God, what's going on here? These interesting, uncomfortable, awkward truths that nobody else wants to talk about. Well, that's where I live. And I'm going to be engaged in a search for lots of them. And over the next couple of months, I'm going to take American campuses on that journey with me. We're going to be talking about race. We're going to talk about sexuality. We're going to be talking about politics. We're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about foreign policy. A huge array of subjects. And I'm also going to be talking, of course, about the election. I'll be talking about Hillary and about Donald Trump in the run-up to November. And I'll be in New York for November. I'm sure doing a lot of media there. And finally, we'll be addressing a lot of controversies that have happened on campus in a more direct way than I've previously done on tour. Now, yes, when you come to these shows, you're going to get to see me in more expensive outfits and even better hair, if that were imaginable.
That's where I was hoping you'd go with it.
Thank you.
The rest of it I was kind of tuning out.
Yeah, all right, okay. Even bigger and better hair. I've now come round to extensions. I had extensions put in for a photo shoot 2 weeks ago. And I have come to realize that if women can do it, I should be able to do it too. And there's no shame in anything Mariah Carey does, and she lives in them. So that I've opened up a brave new world of experimentation, of color, style, size, and fashion in my hair. You'll be seeing a variety of different experiments over the next 4 months. But we're also going to be returning to, or visiting in the first place, some of the crucibles of the social justice justice movement, because this tour isn't just about provoking and prompting discussion. It's not just about exploring more topics than we've had opportunity to before. And it's not just about doing all of that in a far more spectacular and polished and way to bigger audiences. It's also about tracing the etiology of social justice, about working out the history of this. Where did it come from? Why is it happening? Ultimately with a view to figuring out how to stop it. So we're going to go to colleges, for instance, we're going to Columbia, the home of Emma Solkowitz, Mattress Girl. I'll be giving a talk called Mattress Gay. Where I may or may not have a mattress and a fake rape claim. And we'll be talking about, the 4, 5, 6 big cultural events that happened in American higher education over the last decade that gave rise to this movement, that gave credibility to it. So we're looking to go to La Crosse, UVA, all sorts of other schools, and there are new dates added all the time at dangerousfaggot.com. So you keep an eye on the website. If I'm not in your area, or I'm not going to your school, or you think there's a glaring omission, it's probably just that we haven't signed off the paperwork yet. There's loads being announced all the time. So keep an eye on the site, and we put all the ticket buying links on the site as soon as we're able to. There's a really interesting thing to be done on this tour, which is actually to sort of put together the history of, this 2000s and 2010s campus social justice insanity. So I hope that the collected body of work, by the time we've done the end of this, and it's an awfully good fun, and it's silly and it's slapstick and it's camp, but there's going to be real good substance to these talks. And I hope that by the end of it, the sort of 40 talks together will represent a body of work that provides sort of the definitive history of social justice and why it's all bullshit.
Well, Milo's commitment, I think, to the listeners is that you guys are going to see the terrific outfits, you're going to see the spectacle, you're going to get the jokes, and my commitment to you guys is that I'm going to make sure they're as intellectually rigorous as Milo is capable of, because we all know that Milo, he can go low and he can go high.
My natural instinct is to be lazy and just rely on the outfits. In drag queen culture, we call it resting on pretty. It's like if a girl, if a guy makes a really beautiful woman, he doesn't have to try too hard with the outfit or the singing or the performance, because he can just rest on pretty.
Yeah, well, and you will some nights, but other nights this is going to be intellectually substantial, and we're going to be taking on the professoriate class, the academia class that's really trying to destroy a generation of young Americans. And we're going to be talking directly to not just the young people in the crowd, but to the people who are corrupting them, and that's how we think of it. And it's going to be very powerful, and so make sure to keep up to date online as we continue to post more.
I like that you put it like that, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to just draw that out before you go on, which is, I described that what the tour was going to do in terms of, I think, in fairly academic and fairly gentle terms. You're teasing out another aspect of this, which is something that I think speaks for itself, but I didn't exactly say, but is worth repeating. This is a declaration of war. This is, this is a full frontal assault on, on cultural scolds and on nannies, on social justice warriors, feminists, Black Lives Matter, all of the various dimensions of the, lunatic, sociopathic, conspiracy theorizing, social justice progressive far left. This is a declaration of war. They are going to lose and we are going to win. And this tour is going to be the primary battlefield on which, the forces of freedom and truth and justice prevail against the scolds and schoolmarms of social justice. I think that's, if you want to sort a more sort of if you want a broader brush, more theatrical and more historical motivation to follow what's happening in this tour, perhaps that's it.
Yeah, I think it is too. And you also make me seem like a really good hype man, Milo, but I'm only your second best hype man or hype woman.
Who is the best one?
Oh, you know who it is. One Hillary Rodham Clinton reading your headlines.
Of course.
Did she not know that you have a tour coming up and she's just giving you free advertising and an incredible?
I was watching.
I'm just looking forward to the montage video. The tour rolls out.
I know. I was watching it with Joel Stein actually, and neither of us knew what was going to happen. And suddenly I started hearing Hillary Clinton read my headlines. Would you rather your child had feminism or cancer? Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. And these are sort of like, light-hearted provocations, but with some serious data and science in there, designed to make you angry and to make you laugh and to make you think, or as all the best provocations do, all three of those things. And of course, and what's great about it is not just that Hillary Clinton is so incensed by my headlines that she is sort of, publicly calling them out, but that she lies about them. She's wrenched them from context to try to present them as some sort of like hateful, misogynistic, reactionary blogging. When actually, if you go and look, as many people of course did, go and Google those headlines, because of course she was reading them out, and I think people at home were like, that sounds hilarious. People at home were Googling these things, going and finding them and realizing actually that they were sort of brilliant. So no, it was great marketing for us. I have to ask you about one thing. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. I have to ask you about one thing before we wrap up. We could talk for hours because you are always my favorite person to talk to. But I want to talk to you about one thing, and it's a subject close to both of our hearts. And it's sort of a sad story, actually. And it's something I wrote about today. So if you're listening to this, it'll have been a couple of days old. And it is the website Snopes. Now, the headline, this is possibly my favorite headline of mine, maybe my favorite headline on Breitbart of all time. Snopes says Bannon only partially responsible for Breitbart's man-meat injections. I mean, some people go into journalism hoping that one day they might be able to hide the phrase man-meat injections into paragraph 19. I came into journalism knowing that within 2 years I'd be putting it in headlines, and I'm very grateful to have found an editor like you that lets me. The
image alone, by the way, you have to Google it just to see the image that was. I don't know if you picked this one, Milo, or
no, this wasn't me. I think this was Alan Bakari, our brilliant
the image alone is worth the click.
It does look like a gigantic. You know what? Just go look for it. Just go look it up. So let me tell you briefly. Excuse me. Let me have a swig of water. I'm on. I'm not even allowed Diet Coke now because my trainer Will Magner, who is also the star of a previous episode and one of Alex's new little friends, it says that it messes with your hormones and it screws up the supplements. All a complete madness. I don't believe a word of it, but I'm here swigging on something called Highland Spring. I mean, the most I knew about water was that it was a mixer you had with whiskey until about 6 months ago. Anyway. I want to just take listeners briefly through man-meat injections. So I write a column about how terrible birth control is for women. And it is, by the way. I mean, this is one of those things that sooner or later, you wait long enough, the Catholic Church gets proved right about everything. Together with the washing machine, the pill has been a disaster for women's happiness. But the pill in particular, it's poison. It poisons women's bodies and it encourages women to pile on the pounds. And there are plenty of studies in this. You can look up my coverage on this stuff. And I wrote, your birth control injection will add on pounds that will prevent the injection you really want, quote, of man meat, end quote. This it was a little joke about sex. Now, this was misrepresented on, do you remember what was it? It was a TV show, wasn't it? It was either The Hill or you know what? It was, oh God, I can't remember. It was a TV show. I think it was, oh God. This makes me sound terrible. I can't remember. Anyway, somebody misreported that Steve Bannon, our executive chairman currently on leave, who is now the CEO of the Trump campaign.
Yeah, I think this was a Clinton News Network thing, was it not?
I think it was. I'm embarrassed that I can't remember. No, you know what? You're right. It was Maria Cardona. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's who it was. Yeah. I remember now. So anyway, it was misreported by her that this was a headline for which Steve Bannon was responsible. Now, if you know anything about media companies, you know that executive chairmen of media companies rarely get involved in line-by-line editing of, columnists' think pieces. And indeed, it is preposterous to suggest on the basis of no evidence whatsoever, not only that Steve Bannon might be responsible for this phrase, but that he would even be aware of its existence. But CNN didn't just allege that. They alleged that he was responsible for it. Now, Snopes. We get to Snopes because Snopes is the key thing here. Snopes used to be the site that you went to if you want to find out if something was true. Well, Snopes investigated this claim that Steve Bannon had talked about man-meat injections. And as I just, for reasons I've just explained, it ought to have been given a rating of completely untrue, because it is beyond the realms of reasonable belief, understanding, possibility, absent any evidence, that you could possibly rate CNN's claim that Bannon was responsible for this.
There is, to this day, no evidence Steve has read the article, seen the clips about the article, or even is aware of your article that is responding to that article.
Well, no, I have actually emailed him the article now because I wanted to be exchanging emails from Steve that had the subject line "man meat injections," because I wanted to be able to say I'd done that. I just wanted to be able to say I'd done that. I wanted the screenshot. So he probably is aware of it now, but this is probably the first he heard of it. Now, Snopes gave this claim a mixed truth rating. Mixed truth. He didn't write it, he didn't edit it, he may never have known its existence. But CNN's claim that Steve Bannon was responsible for the phrase man meat injection in relation to contraception, it was given a mixed truth, merely because it was published by the site of which he was executive chairman, among his other business interests. Now, this is so obviously and completely ludicrous and politically motivated. It is the worst example of a trend that I've seen quite a lot, actually, over the last 6 months happening at Snopes.com. It's made me very sad. Talk to me about your feelings on this, because I think you instinctively felt the same as I did, which is that it wasn't glee.
There's two things to highlight. First of all, the tactic is very obvious, and this is where it's fun to be the boss, because I can say things knowing that our haters on the far left will marginalize this as conspiracy theorism. But this is Saul Alinsky. This is picking a target, freezing it, and personalizing it. This is the rules for radicals that Barack Obama read and Hillary Clinton as well, and understanding how to fight political warfare in the United States of America. And it comes from the left. A lot of the tactics are very effective. And one of them is personalizing the target. So the target of Breitbart News is much too abstract. When you've got people like you, Milo, and Brandon Darby, and Matt Boyle, and me, and Raheem Kassam, and James Dellingpole, and most everyone in the company almost entirely anonymous, it's very hard to nail down the company and try to shame us. But if you can somehow isolate it to one person and make it personal and try to introduce that person as some sort of devil-like figure, then you can try to destroy them. And that's what the left is trying to do to Steve right now. They're only trying to do it because he's very effective. So that's the tactic, is that blame
I'm just jealous
Steve.
They didn't pick me. I want to be the evil Voldemort figure.
They have been. They have been, Marlow.
Well, I'm going to
have the show. I've got tons of examples too.
Well, of course. I'm going to have to take Steve out so I can take my rightful place as the dark underlord of all
my
that is
official
wrong.
recommendation as your boss is not to take Steve out.
We probably have to say that for the lawyers, don't we? Yeah. If you're listening to this, Trump Inc., Mr. Bannon, or anybody else at Breitbart connected to any of the companies related to Breitbart News, I don't mean it.
So that's my comment generally on the tactic. My comment on Snopes is quite a bit of disappointment, because
Don't you find it sad?
Snopes.
Isn't it sad? I wasn't happy at all to read this. I was sort of sad.
I was too, and you and I were about the same age. We came of age probably at the same moment in the history of the internet, probably, I would venture to guess, using the internet roughly the same amount of time for probably similar things. Okay, I take that back. You're Milo. I forgot for a second.
Drop it.
But the Snopes was considered one of the few brands on the internet that actually was considered neutral, that was considered a truth teller. And they are, I guess, abandoning that because they simply don't like Steve, or they don't like you, or they don't like Donald Trump, or they don't like all of you guys. And that's very sad, because it is very easy to be a partisan brand. It's much more difficult to be perceived as neutral. And I can't see very many other opportunities that are out there to be neutral. Snopes had it, and they're shamelessly giving it away. And it's very upsetting.
Do you know what strikes me as well is it's so petty. I mean, this I think is a really sort of iconic, emblematic example, because it's so egregiously, untrue and preposterous. This attempt to say mixed truth. I mean, give me a break. What a hill to die on. I mean, because I think you're right. What a hill to die on.
Milo man-meat article.
Man-meat injections, trying to pin the phrase man-meat injections on somebody who's never heard of it and never had anything to do with it, just to take a swing at Trump and Breitbart. What a hill to die on when you have one of, as I think you correctly say, what was previously an unblemished reputation for not being partisan. And that's something that you have to fight for, like tooth and nail, on the internet. And, I can't think of that many websites. I can't really think of any that still,
I can't think of any either.
That still have that distinction. And until very recently, Snopes did. And I suppose this is the power of Donald Trump. This is how mad he makes people.
This is how mad he makes people. And you're keen to mention the hill to die on, because what hill did Twitter choose to die on as a neutral brand?
Well, exactly the same.
Milo didn't like the Ghostbusters movie.
Yes.
Of the controversial things you've said and written, Milo, your Ghostbusters critique is not in the top 1,000.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And those tweets to Leslie Jones were probably the least offensive thing I'd said all month. No, I'm serious. What did I say, like 160,000 tweets? I would say that those 3 tweets to or about Leslie Jones were probably in the fourth quartile. In all the tweets I've ever sent.
I probably have 3 emails from Hangry Milo in the last 48 hours that are meaner than anything in that Ghostbusters review.
I knew I was going to get it in the neck for them. You see, there is no discourtesy level.
Hey, I read everything. I always say that. I don't always respond, but I read them.
There's no discourtesy
and that's
level.
What Twitter decided we were going to announce that we are the social justice warrior platform and we are against free speech. Is because Milo, they decided the last straw was Milo not liking feminist Ghostbusters reboot.
The story of this podcast has now become, there is no subject that you will not bring up in order to shamelessly roast me on my own show, including...
You'll know I don't love you when I stop roasting.
Including, but not limited to, the emails I send at 2 a.m. my time when I am like dying of hunger, wishing that, thinking that I might go into next door and just decapitate Will Magner and drink the blood directly from his neck so something is in my belly before roasting him on an open fire. Yeah, Snapchat, I think now these days. Yeah, I don't think anyone's on Vine anymore.
I'm sorry, that was a dated reference. See, I'm showing my age now.
Yeah, but I occasionally send these. Well, I think the best adjective for them is stroppy. They're occasionally sent emails that are slightly stroppy, and they're the closest I ever get to genuine diva behavior. Although I certainly hope to develop some bona fide diva credentials. I don't know whether this rider, which
a work of art. Well,
it was a work.
I can't decide what was my favorite. The McRib reference, which I'm a huge McRib fan. That was, of course, a classic. The trail mix with all of the nuts and fruit removed. So what is left?
The poppy seed bagels with this poppy seeds.
No poppy seeds. There's poppy seed bagels. I mean, you're not a crazy person.
But this is a Van Halen thing. Van Halen used to say M&Ms with the brown ones removed. And the whole point of these crazy celebrity riders, the reason this became a sort of part of pop culture mythology, was that stars would put weird requests into their rider to make sure that the thing had been read. So that if they knew that if the brown M&Ms had been taken out of the bowl of M&Ms in the dressing room, that the rider had likely been read cover to cover, and that the security restrictions and the serious stuff was probably in hand. Of course, has later become something that celebrities like to have fun with.
Yes, but it does sound, I know I'm going to join you for a couple legs of the tour. Yes, I do want the slightly warm baby oil with lavender and lemon rind. That was not a joke.
No, that's absolutely not a joke. That is something that I very definitely want. I think the best write-up, well, the Hollywood Reporter got their hands on this first, but the best write-up I have to say was at the Tab, which is a brilliant sort of federated student media network. And they mentioned that I want a $7,500 fine if any venue accidentally plays an Adele song. I want 4 top.
I was going to mention the Adele song because I was going to say, is that your first unspeakable truth of the tour? Is it okay to say Adele's overrated? Because I would like to join you in that sentiment, but I don't know if that's allowed in the United States of America at this point in time.
Do you know what we should do? I think one of our talks should be about people who everyone likes who are actually crap. And that should be the title of the talk. And it should be Adele, Beyonce, Meryl Streep, and we should go through all of the people that we both agree everyone else thinks is great, but are actually crap. And there's a sort of suspended communal lying about these people where we all feel, for whatever reason it is, Adele because she's fat, Beyonce because she's black, Meryl Streep because she's old or whatever, or too Jewish, whatever it is, or whatever it is about these people that we feel we have to lie and say we like them. It's the caviar thing, you know? It's like people will think less of me if I say I don't like caviar. They'll think I'm not cultured. They'll think I'm not educated. They'll think I don't have a sophisticated palate.
Do you like caviar?
No, not at all. I mean, I like some very expensive things, but I don't like...
Well, I know what the lead is now on the podcast write-up this week.
Milo Yiannopoulos reveals he does not like caviar. Yes, there we go. I will pass that on to our producer, Tom Secotta, our executive producer, Colin Medine. Alex Marlow. It's been wonderful. We could do this, and indeed, as I have been badgering you for months, see, it's my turn now because I get to close the show. I can mute you if I want. As I have been suggesting to you, and I think listeners now, I encourage you to write in or tweet Alex Marlow since you can't tweet me anymore. I encourage you to write in if you agree with me. I have been badgering Alex to do a show like this. Ideally every week, but possibly every month. We'd like to call it Marlopolis, and it will be an hour or so of Alex and I maybe taking calls, discussing things, whether it's chocolate milk or the state of the American political classes, whatever we find interesting that week. And I want to call it Marlopolis. And I want to make this ridiculously busy human being commit to me to an hour a week. So if you agree, if you've enjoyed this show, if you've enjoyed where are we? Oh, we went over an hour, maybe the longest show ever. If you enjoy this hour and you think this is the sort of thing you would like to listen to on a weekly basis, I encourage you to email Alex directly. Sorry, boss. Tweet him.
No, alex@breitbart.com.
There we go. See, no, I didn't tell them.
I fear no man.
I didn't tell. There we go. See, alex@breitbart.com. He's given you permission. Do it and tell him that you think Marlopolis is the best idea for a podcast you've ever heard. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Milo. And for the record, for the trolls listening, and we know you can't resist, there will be another 1,000, if not 10,000, outrageous Milo headlines at Breitbart.com/Milo.
Thank you. That final plug from the man who describes himself perfectly accurately as the ultimate hype guy. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.